Hello, hello, Garland Nixon here. It's 7 p.m. on a, forgive me, I'm looking down. Look, that's a bad habit, I guess. I'm looking down. It's 7 p.m. It's Sunday evening, and I'm here to to have a chat, just to, I guess, have some fun. Let me check my mic here. My mic sounds right. To talk about, and I guess the subject is what I learned from Russiagate. And I think it's important right now in the election season to talk about that. I guess it is. I don't know. Look, whether it's important or not, I'm talking about it. Everybody's talking about Kamala Harris, but some things have come out recently, and I think it leads me to want to chat about it a little bit and talk about what's up. Russiagate, for those of you who, look, you haven't been living in a cave, you know what it is. The foundation of Russiagate was what? The foundation of Russiagate was Donald Trump is working directly for Vladimir Putin, right? That was the foundation of it. That somehow Donald Trump was working for Vladimir Putin. That either or it was awful fuzzy. Let's face it, it was a little fuzzy. But let's go through the possibilities of what Russiagate was supposed to be. Either he was working for Vladimir Putin directly, he was I guess Putin's assistant or something, right? Or the other thing was, and this came through the Steele dossier, the Christopher Steele dossier, that Vladimir Putin, the Russians, somehow had some compromise, as they say. They had something on Vladimir Putin. And in particular, they had something to do with hookers urinating on him. And they had this video and this information, and they could use it against him. Therefore, get back to it. He worked for Vladimir Putin, right? And then it took all kinds of weird twists and turns, right? Like, for instance, the whole Republican Party at one point, I've seen articles, the Republicans are working for Vladimir Putin for the Russians. People that work for him. Oh, Michael Flynn went to a party for RT, Russia Today. They had the Russian news network had a party in Moscow. Michael Flynn went to that party. Therefore, he had to be working for Russia. So it was, and even remember this, there was a term that was used a lot, and this was the term Russian connections, right? There are Russian connections. That was MSNBC. So it could have been like, well, Republican Senator so-and-so's brother-in-law works for a company that once had a contract with a Russian company. There's Russian connection. So it went from Donald Trump's working all at the same time, Donald Trump's working directly for Vladimir Putin, to somebody in Donald Trump's orbit has, quote, Russian connections. I remember that. And I remember watching various shows and being online and people saying, yeah, what about all the Russian connections? And I would say, what's that even mean? And they'd say, this person's connected to Russia. And I'd say, what does that mean? Russian connections. It's like, you ever heard the like 3 degrees or 6 degrees of separation? You can like connect any two people in the world or something. So if the country had been France, I guarantee you could have went through all of Trump's people or all of the Democrats or all of the Republicans, and you could have found some company, some family member, something connected to France. You just needed the end country, and you can connect damn near anybody to it. Right? But Russiagate was something interesting. Very, very interesting. Here's my first thought on Russiagate is this. And to me, this was always a clue. Where did it start? What was the beginning of Russiagate? What was the genesis of Russiagate? Where did Russiagate start? Was there like some evidence came? Was there something? So let's talk about that. Where did Russiagate start? It started in the CIA. John Brennan was the first person. He was the head of the CIA, and apparently he was alarmed that people who worked with Donald Trump may have talked to somebody that had something to do with Russia, and we got to look into this. So apparently the genesis of it was John Brennan, the CIA. I'm just going to say, if you know anything, there's a book right here. Here's a book right here. The Devil's Chessboard. The Ghost, John Jesus Angleton. Read some books on the CIA, and as soon as someone tells you this particular narrative started with the CIA, you are going to be suspicious. But here's the interesting thing about it. For most people, even most Democrats, before this, you could have said, if something starts with the CIA, that you should be suspicious, and they would have said, yeah. But it worked for them, and I think that's part of the whole operation, how the people knew it would work, how they saw it would catch on the people that were pushing it, and that was this: they hated Donald Trump. If you have listened to my radio shows, you've listened to me online, you know I talk a lot about the perspective of the confidence game, the con artist, right? And why does it work? I've read a great book, and it was called The Confidence Game, Why We Fall for It Every Time. A good con artist knows what you want to believe, and they give you what you want to believe, and they give you some other stuff with it. So why did Russiagate work so well? There were people who despised Donald Trump, and their party lost to Donald Trump. They did not want to believe that their party lost to Donald Trump, even though there was scant evidence. There was no evidence that Russiagate was true, and the very premise of it was absolutely absurd. But that didn't matter because they hated Donald Trump. So they had an inclination to believe it already. That's how a con works, right? Let me give you an example. Some girl, and she's got a boyfriend, and somebody says, you know, I saw your boyfriend out with X, with another girl. And in the back of her mind, she knows if that's true, their relationship is kind of screwed because she's never really going to trust him anymore. And he's going to lie to her, and she's not going to, and all these things. So in the back of her mind, she doesn't really want to break up with him. So she doesn't want to believe that. And a couple people tell her, and they're like, oh gosh, he's messing with this girl. Everyone said, I saw him with a girl, and she was blonde hair. She was about this tall. She was about the same description. She wore glasses. And she's had 5 different people say, I've seen your boyfriend out with this girl, and this is a description of her, and this is where we were there. And they were holding hands, and they were smooching, all of these things. So it all makes sense. But she doesn't want to believe it. So she asks him, and he gives her some cockamamie story, and she goes, okay, what is the reality? She didn't want to believe that. So any story they gave her was good enough. She didn't want the truth. She wanted something that was going to make her feel better. She wanted something that felt like the truth, not the truth. So he gave her some story. What was it? My cousin. And she's like, good enough. And he knew she was lying. And intellectually, if she'd have thought about it, she knew he was lying, but emotionally she didn't care. So she convinced herself that it was true. And who knows, what worked, the relationship might have worked out. He might have said, I'm caught. Let me drop this girl on the side and go. I don't know. He might have kept cheating, but whatever. That ain't the point of the story. The point of the story is a cockamamie lie works for somebody when emotionally they want to believe something. So you have these Democrats that don't want to believe that Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, and they hate Donald Trump. So I've seen it over the course of the years. Anything you tell them about Donald Trump that's negative, yay! Yay! Well, you know, Donald Trump is a werewolf. Yeah, he's a werewolf. Yeah, he's terrible. It don't matter. They hate Donald Trump. Give them something bad. Every accusation against Donald Trump, you watch this resistance. Every accusation against Donald Trump was treated as though it was absolute fact. And there would be accusation after accusation after accusation. And I started thinking to myself, why? I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm to the left of the Democratic Party. I know I ain't supporting him. But I know a pile of bullcrap when I see it. But they didn't, because it felt so good. They were getting a dopamine rush. You know, it's funny. Recently, somebody left MSNBC. One of the Jimmy Dore talked about it. One of the producers or something left MSNBC. And what she said was, she said, well, you know, we don't do honest news. And the people, and what she was told is people don't come to us for news. They come to us for comfort. Think about that. That's somebody on MSNBC saying they don't come to us for news, because she's like, we're feeding them a line of bullshit. They don't come to us for the truth. They don't come to us for news. They come to us for comfort. And at least I'll give them credit for telling the truth. So with Russiagate, when it came to Trump, the people didn't turn on MSNBC because they wanted the news. They turned on MSNBC because they hated Donald Trump, and they wanted somebody to tell them something that would feel good. And Russiagate felt great. And every night it was some Ukraine gate. It didn't matter what it was. And they'd say, Trump must be impeached. And you'd say, well, but for what? He's done all kinds of things. Okay, like what? All kinds of things. I saw it with Trump. I saw it with the so-called MAGA people when Obama was in. You'd see it. Obama's got to be impeached. What for? violating the Constitution. Yeah, give me an example. He violated the. They didn't know. They hated him, and it felt. And see, that's the game. That's the game. And you think the CIA can't figure that out. So what was the other genesis? John Brennan says, okay, hey, Trump's connected to Russia in some kind of way. And then but this was all a bunch of bull crap. But what happens with the FBI? The FBI's origin for their Russiagate investigation, we still don't know what it is because it was a lie. Here's what we do know, that what the FBI has said was the origin of Russiagate, why they started their Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Here's what we know. It's a lie. Here's what the investigation said. Here's what they said. This low-ranking official, low-ranking guy who worked with the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos, was approached by a guy who has connections to the Russians named Joseph Mifsud. And this guy told him that the Russians had, some emails for Hillary Clinton. Therefore, we had to start an investigation because, the Russians might have, and these emails and Papadopoulos might become. So that's what they said. Here's the problem. Further investigations have shown that Joseph Mifsud was not an operative for Russia. He was not a person with Russian connections. He was U.S. intel. So according to the FBI's reason for starting it, right? Here's what happened. According to their info, a man who was working for the U.S. intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community sent Joseph Mifsud, a long-time Western intelligence operative, an intelligence operative with the Brits, with the UK, an intelligence operative who's worked with the CIA, who's worked with the Italians, one of their own people. They sent that guy to George Papadopoulos and lied to George Papadopoulos. Apparently, there's transcripts. Apparently, so they sent their guy to George Papadopoulos, and their guy lied as part of their own operation and said to Papadopoulos, "Hey, I've got stuff from the Russians," and they had to open an investigation because of that. But wait a minute. He's their guy, and they sent him to Papadopoulos. So you expect, we're supposed to believe that the FBI, that the intelligence community sent someone in an operation to lure George Papadopoulos in, but they didn't know that they thought their own guy was a Russian guy. They thought their guy that they sent, according to them, the guy that the U.S. intelligence community sent after Papadopoulos, recorded the call, recorded the meeting with Papadopoulos, took transcripts with the meeting with Papadopoulos. They thought he was a Russian spy, so they had to open an investigation. You see what sense that makes? It was a cover-up. So now we know that was a fraud. This thing is a fraud from beginning to end. Recently, just guess what came out? You're going to love this. Well, let me get to this. Let me get to the Steele dossier next. Let me get next to the Steele dossier. I'm going to talk about Russiagate. I'm going to talk about what I learned from, but let me talk about some things because it's important, because there may be someone here who believes it. Someone watching might be saying, hey, wait a minute, Russiagate's absolutely factual. So if there's somebody here that believes it, I'm going to talk about it. Not that they'll walk away saying, I don't believe it now, because it's kind of almost like a religion. The people that believe Russiagate, they don't change their mind because they have new facts. No. New facts ain't going to change the mind of somebody who believes something because it feels good. They can ignore all kind of facts for that. Don't expect to, but I'll talk about it. So along comes Christopher Steele. Christopher Steele is a former MI6, former MI6, their CIA operative in England. Supposedly he left and he started his own private intelligence agency. So he's working for the initially for some Republican donors to do some work, background work on Trump, and find some find some information to hurt Trump, right? So he's doing this investigation, and eventually it goes over to the Clinton campaign. They stopped paying him, the Clinton campaign, so he's working for the Clinton campaign. So what happens? So he writes this dossier, and all the Democrats are talking about the Steele dossier. It's a document that he wrote where he made a bunch of claims about Trump, right? And he said things like, and that was the beginning, that was some of it. He said that Trump, there was a number of claims he made about Trump being involved in Russian collusion. And one of them was that Trump was in a hotel in Moscow and some Russian prostitutes were urinating, giving him golden showers. And the Russians had all this information on him and they could hold it over his head. Therefore, he was doing whatever the Russians wanted. And they pushed the Steele dossier, right? And it went through all the hands. It went through the State Department, the FBI, the CIA, etc. Here's the problem with the Steele dossier. For those, and I had people for a long time telling me they believed, oh, it's true. I'm telling you, it's been proven. And all along, I was like, it's the worst piece of crap I've ever read in my life. Before I knew anything about the documentation of how false it was. I just, from what I read, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You expect me to believe this? It was on its face absurd. But here's what we know about the Steele dossier now. Within the first couple months of Donald Trump's presidency, the FBI was looking into the Steele dossier. They had the Steele dossier and it had all these claims about Trump. So they said to Christopher Steele, who are your sources? Who gave you that? Remember, the Steele dossier, what you heard was Christopher Steele formerly worked in Russia and he has people in Moscow. He's got people close to the Kremlin who have told him all these things. So I'm telling you, the Steele dossier is true. So they ask him for his sources, and it's a guy who works for the Brookings Institute, which is a Democratic, like centrist, organization, right? Mainstream Democrat, Hillary's people, blah, 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 right? I mean, Democrat establishment to the hill. His source was not in Russia. It wasn't even in another country. It was in Washington, D.C. It was a guy who has a history of drunk driving charges, drunken in public drunkenness, a guy who's got a record who seems to have at some point had a significant alcohol problem. That's his sources. So the FBI goes to this guy and says, here's the Steele dossier. And what do you have? Tell me Steele made these claims, substantiate them. And the guy's like, first of all, I can't believe he said, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't believe he put that stuff forward as truth. That's like stuff from me and my drinking buddies. It was said as a joke. It was made up. This stuff in the Steele dossier, no, I ain't standing behind that. And the guy goes on to say, and Christopher Steele embellishes stuff, so you can't trust him. And some of the stuff that he claims that I said, I didn't even say. So the FBI, within months, the first few months of Donald Trump going to office, the FBI goes to the sources of the Steele dossier, where Christopher Steele got his information from. And the sources say it's bullshit. Flat out, straight out bullshit. Nope. I told him some of this stuff, some of it he appears to have made up. And no, I don't have anything on this. It's basically, he made some of it up and I made some of it up. But let me add this. Even in the Steele dossier, the claims were so absurd, it shouldn't have taken investigation. As an example, he made a claim that some people were being paid for their work out of the Miami consulate for the Russians. Sounds like the Russian consulate in Miami's paying some people off. Okay, well, that sounds like maybe maybe you ought to look into that, right? Hey, let's check out the Miami consulate, see if these Russians in the Miami consulate are paying people off for their nefarious. So Christopher Steele, this guy's a former MI6 agent. He knows his stuff, and he has made claims that something fishy is going on in the Miami consulate. There's only one problem. There's no Russian consulate in Miami. Do you think maybe when the FBI investigators looked at that and said, okay, the Russian consulate in Miami, there's no Russian consulate in Miami. That should have been, as a guy who's a former police officer, former investigator, former major, former commander of the investigations division for a statewide police department, I'd have looked at that and said, and this thing's probably bullshit. This is an absurd claim. Let's take this thing with a grain of salt and let's start looking at it a little closer. That ain't what the FBI did. You know what the FBI did with the Steele dossier? When they talked to Christopher Steele's sources and found out that the Steele dossier was bullcrap, which they should have already known, They then took the Steele dossier and they went to the FISA court and they presented it as evidence to get a warrant. Think about this. As a former law enforcement officer, as a former person in charge of investigations, when I sign off on something and it goes to get a warrant, I better mean it. I better mean it. I better believe it. See, you're protected by like Good Samaritan laws and things like that in law enforcement. If you can show that you believed it, even if it was false, if you show that, a reasonable and prudent person would have believed that you acted in good faith. That's the term. You acted in good faith. You may present evidence to the court and the evidence may not be true, but you acted in good faith. You thought it was true. You were misled and somebody said, I know this. And you thought it was true. You looked into it. You gave it to the court. A person can't sue you, go after you because you acted in good faith. They had looked into the Steele dossier and they knew it was lies. And they presented it to the court as though it was true. Somebody should go to jail for that. This is Russiagate I'm talking about. This is Russiagate. This is Russiagate. Meanwhile, in that same investigation, a guy, look up the name Kevin Kleinsmith. Kevin Kleinsmith is a guy who was a lawyer working on that investigation called Crossfire Hurricane. And they're presenting evidence to the FISA court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, to get these warrants to spy on Carter Page. So he's approving stuff. So they have some ramblings that Carter Page had worked with the CIA and provided them information. Well, if you're trying to argue to the court that this guy is a puppet for Russia and he's working with Russian spies and he has worked with the CIA and provided them information, your argument ain't going to look so good that this guy who had worked with the CIA is now working for the Russians. Could possibly be, but it's weak evidence. He sends something to the CIA. Hey, Carter Page, the CIA sends back something. Yep, he worked with us. Yep, he's provided evidence for us. He takes that email and says, I got to give this to the FISA court. He changes the email to Carter Page did not work with us. Think about what we're saying here. He had an email that said Carter Page worked with us at the CIA. He puts in a few words. Carter Page did not work with us at the CIA. They hand it to the court. They hand the Steele dossier. He knowingly falsified a document and gave it to the FISA court. An email from the CIA, he changed it from did work with the CIA to did not. So you've got the FBI working on Russiagate, handing in a document that they know is false on the Steele dossier, changing emails. If you don't believe me, look up Kevin Kleinsmith right now for all the Russiagate documents that you see all day long. Go online. You see, Rachel Maddow's not talking about that. CNN's not talking about the fact that Kevin Kleinsmith just pled guilty to changing that email. Go look it up right now. He just pled guilty to changing that email. And ask yourself, if they thought that Donald Trump was some kind of a Russian operative, why would they falsify documents to investigate him and his people? If they thought he was guilty, why would they lie and falsify documents? Why would they take the Steele dossier that they knew was fraudulent, that they had talked to the sources and his sources had said, nah, I ain't say that. That's a bunch of lies. Ooh, and I made that stuff up. He told them it was false. They had it in their hands. They submitted it to the court. That's Russiagate. That's Russiagate. Let me tell you something else that you need to know about Russiagate. Why I said from the beginning it was garbage. Here's the next thing about the Russiagate. One of the things that happened was, sorry, I got lost a little bit. My phone started buzzing. Where was I going? The Steele dossier. Oh, another foundation of Russiagate was this. The Russians had hacked into the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, DNC server. They had hacked into their server. They had stolen these emails off the server. And they gave these emails to WikiLeaks. Therefore, Julian Assange is involved because he was working with the Russians, right? Julian Assange has been working. He's been conspiring with a foreign government. Somebody said that to me in the last few weeks. Well, Julian Assange was conspiring with a foreign government. So in order for Julian Assange to have had been conspiring with the Russians, to let out Hillary's emails, you'd have to have evidence that the Russians stole them, right? That the Russians had the emails, that at least somebody had taken the emails off the DNC server. So we recently find out that Sean Henry was the co-founder of CrowdStrike. Now, the DNC servers, apparently, they say they were compromised. They call in this company CrowdStrike. Sean Henry was one of the co-founders. CrowdStrike comes in, examines the servers and said, yep, somebody, we think it was the Russians, has compromised these servers. Okay, there we are, right? Sean Henry, something real odd happened. The FBI came in and said, yep, the Russians have compromised these servers. The FBI never examined the servers. I've never heard of such a thing. They just took the word of CrowdStrike. And let me add this. During the Roger Stone trial, something else was found out. So you would think that the FBI provided them with the forensic data, that the FBI provided them with information and said, yeah, we know it was the Russians. Here's the data that we use software to check the servers. Here's the data that shows that the Russians were in this server and that they swiped these emails, right? They swiped all this stuff off the server. During the Roger Stone investigation, the FBI admitted that they had taken the word of CrowdStrike and CrowdStrike had never presented them with evidence. That CrowdStrike gave them a preliminary report that said, yeah, the Russians broke into the server. And they were supposed to give them a final report. They never gave them a final report. So the FBI's argument that the Russians broke into the server and stole the emails basically was CrowdStrike, an independent company that the DNC was paying, told us, and they never provided us with any evidence. But it gets worse. Remember, the foundation of Julian Assange conspiring with the Russians, that was part of Russiagate, is that the Russians gave Julian Assange these emails and he published them on WikiLeaks. Therefore, he was working with the Russians. Here's what we find out recently within the last few months. The testimony from the House Intelligence Committee comes out, and one Sean Henry, who was the co-founder of CrowdStrike, is asked a question. He's asked, on what date did you find the evidence that the Russians had taken these emails off of the servers? And here's what Sean Henry says. We never really found any evidence that anything was taken off the servers. Think about this. Sean Henry, the co-founder of CrowdStrike, the only company that examined the servers, under oath in front of Congress. You see, there was a lot of BS and a lot of stuff, but once he got under oath in front of Congress, he had to tell the truth because he was putting himself in legal jeopardy for lying to Congress, which would of course be a felony. And he feared the Republicans might go after me. So he's asked, what was the date? When did you find out? And it was by the Democrats. And they're like, oh, we're going to get him now. We're getting him now. Oh, Trump's going down. We got Putin. Watch, I'm going to hit him. All right, Sean Henry, you tell me the date that you knew that the Russians stole the emails. And Sean Henry's answer, and I'm paraphrasing, is we don't have any data to indicate that any information was taken off the servers. It looks like someone may have been preparing to, but there's no evidence that anybody ever took data off the servers. So how can you argue that the Russians hacked into the DNC email servers, took the information off, and then gave it to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, and then they were working with the Russians to do this, when CrowdStrike, the company that examined the servers, said under oath in front of Congress, there is no evidence that anyone took anything off of that server. That's pretty damning. So what do we have for Russiagate so far? We got a Steele dossier that basically the sources for the information in the Steele dossier said pure bullshit, top to bottom. We've got a claim that the Russians hacked into the servers that the company's owner, co-owner, who examined the server says, we got no evidence of that. Now let's go to number 3. Donald Trump's working for Putin. Well, for 3 years, turn on Saturday Night Live and they're singing, "We wish you a Mueller Christmas." I watched Saturday Night Live. It was called A Weekend Update, right? And the woman who always played Mueller, she's on there. Like, and they're like, "So, do you have anything on Trump?" She's like, ooh, "Is Trump going down?" "No, I can't." Right? It was all a joke. And she implied, as she was playing Mueller, we got him. We got the evidence on him with Russia. Trump is going down. I had to watch and I do a radio show in WPFW 89.3 FM every Friday. And I was like, this is horse shit. You got to be kidding me, people. And they were like, Garland, you don't understand. Even my good, close friends on the air with me, I think Mueller's got something on him. Mueller ain't got nothing on him because it's bullcrap. What I said was this: you would sooner convince me. Anybody listening to my show can tell you that I said this. I said, you would sooner convince me that Donald Trump climbed up on the White House roof, jumped off, flapped his arms, and flew to the ground. I would believe that before I believe this Russiagate crap. It's absurd. It's absurd, right? So their guy, St. Robert Mueller, that the resistance showed nothing but love to. He was an independent. He was the man. He was going to get Trump. He was the great hope. He was going to take Trump out. He was the guy that was going to do what they needed to do and rid this country of Donald Trump, the Russian Putin puppet, once and for all. Robert Mueller does an investigation, and they're like, he's colluding with Trump. No collusion. I remember doing my radio show. I didn't know the day that the Mueller report came out. I was on the air at the time it came out, and some guy was telling me, blah, blah, blah. I said, "Yeah, you wait till the Mueller report comes out, buddy. You're telling me you wait. You call me after the Mueller report comes out. I already know what's going to be in it. It's garbage." The answer is no collusion. It's a joke. It's absurd. So it comes out, and Mueller says no collusion. So the infamous Steele dossier was a pile of horse crap. The so-called DNC and the hack on the servers, the co-owner of the company, them said, we got no evidence the Russians took anything. The Mueller report, no collusion. Now let's go one more. The so-called Facebook ads. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So the other argument, keep in mind, so this is maybe the only thing left. This Russian company, and you notice they'd always say the Russians, they wouldn't differentiate. Was it a Russian company? Was it a Russian government? Was it somebody? For instance, if I did something tomorrow, if I wrote a letter, the King of England stinks. He's a jerk. I hate him. Well, the Americans, would they say the Americans hate the King of England? Therefore, this guy's, he lives near Trump. Trump said it. Would they argue because I'm an American that means the American government says it? No, don't like Trump. Right? I'm a lefty. I'm an anti-war, anti-imperialist kind of guy, anti-empire kind of person. So I'm not a pro-Trumpy. I'm an opposite of that. Hate the Republicans, hate the Democrats. That's where I am. But could you argue if I had a business? Well, Garland's got a business and he's doing something there for the U.S. No, it would be absurd. So there's there's a company called the IRA, Internet Research Agency, that's owned by a guy, and the closest they could ever get to this guy to Putin, they called him Putin's cook, the owner, because at one point he was a cook and he owned a catering service, and at one point the catering service had a contract with the Kremlin, and they would have, when they had like meetings and things like that, he would provide the meals. Now imagine that. Imagine if I had a catering service and like the Joint Chiefs of Staffs had meetings and I provided the meals. Would that mean like I'm a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that I spoke for them? No. But Russiagate, these tenuous relationships that's all they had. They had to tie them together. So now he's Putin's cook. Putin's cook. Oh, but this is the best they could do. So if you look at the Internet Research Agency, it's what's called a clickbait farm. They get these lots and lots of Twitter and Facebook pages and Facebook accounts, and then they put out a lot of stuff to get a lot of clicks, and then they can go to their the people who their potential customers and say, look, we got 100,000 people following this account, 100,000 people pay us, and we'll put something out to all 100,000 of these people. That's what a clickbait farm is. They learned how there's clickbait farms. I think Mark Cuban is part owner of one here in the US, which I guess that means he works directly for Trump, right? So at any rate, so the Internet Research Agency, they go forward and they got YouTube pages of all kinds of stuff. So the next argument was these YouTube pages, they took out $100,000 worth of YouTube page ads, things like that, right? That this is what they used. Now, keep in mind, the Clinton campaign put like $200 million in these YouTube and Facebook ads, and $100,000 thwarted all of them. Now, here's the issue. So the Internet Research Agency, which has never been connected to the Russian government, $100,000 worth of ads, over half of them ran after the election. So I'm supposed to believe that this company that was so brilliant, they're working directly with the Kremlin, although it's never been proven, they've never been tied to the Russian government in any way. They were so slick and so smart that they ran Facebook ads to interfere with the election. Half of the ads were after the election. So when that fell apart, you know what they started saying? The Russiagators started saying, because people were saying, well, wait a minute, if they wanted to interfere with the election, why would they run half of their ads after the election? Oh, okay. Fair enough. What they want to do is sow discord and confusion. So now they go from interference to sow discord and confusion in America. No discord and confusion here. Yet the Russians are sitting back. What are you going to do? We are going to sow discord and confusion in America. I thought you said they were interfering with the election. Yeah, well, we kind of did, but that didn't work out. So we're going to go with sow dispute and confusion. So discord and confusion. It is absurd. Now, and let me add this. I don't know if you still can. At one time, you could go like this Washington Post website and actually look at the ads. Because look, if you're going to tell me somebody ran Facebook posts and Twitter posts to alter the election that made people go literally switch from Hillary to Trump or stay home, I'd like to see what they were. So I went and looked at a lot of them. You should be able to find some if you search online. Here's an example. One of them was a Facebook page with a picture of puppies, and a guy named Clint Watts, who's with the Marshall Fund, who runs this thing called Hamilton 68 Dashboard. They're supposed to be out there looking for Twitter and Facebook stuff, right? They get a lot of money to do that. Look for accounts for Russian linked accounts, as they call them, right? Clint Watts literally goes to Congress and says, okay, this Facebook page has a picture of puppies. Fair enough. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But what we think Putin and these people are going to do is they start off, that's how they draw you in, with a Facebook page with pictures of puppies. And then eventually we believe that it's going to go to more political stuff. Eventually we believe. That's your evidence for Russiagate? Well, yeah, sure, it's a picture of puppies. That looks innocent now. But in the long run, we believe they're going to do something more nefarious. Everything they have claimed so far has fallen apart, and they're left with Facebook pages with pictures of puppies as evidence that they were trying to. It didn't even get the interference anymore. So discord and chaos and confusion. So front to back, top to bottom, Russiagate was pure horse crap. Now let's go to the second part of this video. And I don't know how, I don't want to be on here forever, but let's go to the second part of this video. What happened afterwards? Did like all of the people who believe Russiagate suddenly go, I've been had, I've been took, hoodwinked, misled, led astray, bamboozled? Did they say that? No, for two reasons. Number one, the media that did the fear mongering, that lied, that gave them article after article, book after book about Russiagate, collusion, what's going to happen, how Trump is going down, he's a bot for Russia, the whole 9 yards. The people that did all this lying, when all the evidence came out and their little ploy fell apart, it was time for radio silence. Kevin Kleinsmith, go look it up. There's nothing there. Go there, and you can find it. Let me do this right now. Kevin Kleinsmith. Kevin, I'm going to look that up for you since you're on. Kevin Kleinsmith. There we go. Let's look up Kevin Kleinsmith. Ex-FBI lawyer to plead guilty in Trump Russia probe review. There we go. A former FBI lawyer plans to plead guilty to making a false statement in the first criminal case arising from U.S. Attorney General John Durham's investigation. He's accused of altering a government email about a former Trump campaign advisor who was the target of a secret FBI surveillance thing. He includes to plead guilty to the single false statement count, and he regrets his actions. He regrets his actions. He took an email that said Carter Page has worked with the CIA and worked with the CIA, and changed it to Carter Page did not work with the CIA, and he regrets his actions. No, he doesn't. It's like bank robbers. They're like, oh, well, here's a bank robber, and he says, he regrets robbing the bank. He regrets getting caught. He liked the $450,000 in cash he got, but he ain't not so crazy about getting caught. Kevin Kleinsmith is very unhappy about getting caught. The 5-page charging document is limited in scope and does not allege criminal wrongdoing. If you read the papers about this, what you'll find is they do everything they can to downplay it. Not only do most places barely report it, you ain't going to see Rachel Maddow on this one. They downplay it. Sure, he was guilty, and did he lie and alter documents to go after Trump? Yeah, but we don't think it. Now, they don't think there's anything there. Might I add, they found that this guy made statements about how much he hated Trump, like everybody else in the investigation, and we're supposed to believe. Imagine this. I'm a former cop. I'm doing an investigation. Here's the target of the investigation. And I ran an investigations department. I can't imagine that. And I assign an investigator, Garland Nixon, to investigate Joe Schmo. And Garland's like, boy, I hate Joe Schmo. What an idiot. That guy needs to go to jail for the rest of his life. I'd kill him myself if I thought I could get away with it. What a moron. And then I do the investigation, and they say, let's look at the investigation Garland did against Joe Schmo. My God, he lied. He lied to the court. He submitted false evidence to the court. He made false statements. He illegally changed emails. He did everything horrible. My God, what a criminal investigation Garland did against Joe Schmo. You remember what Garland said? Yeah, he said he hated Joe Schmo, and he wanted to make sure Joe Schmo went to jail for the rest of his life, no matter what. Yeah, I don't think that's evidence that Garland was biased in any way in his investigation. Doesn't make sense, does it? But that's what we're getting. So let's talk about, I told you, a great book. You know, I'm a prolific reader. I got 3 books sitting here, man, that you should read. Let me give them to you right now. The Devil's Chessboard. This is about the CIA, the Dulles brothers. Oh, man, brother, man. If you want a book that's going to get you snatched up and taken away by the CIA and the Mossad at the same time, how about Israel's Secret Wars? A history of Israel's intelligence services. You want to read that one. And last but not least, this is a good one. American Exceptionalism and American Innocence. Good stuff. A people's history of fake news from the Revolutionary War to the War on Terror. Good stuff. So at any rate. So now I get back to what happened. And a great book that I read called The Confidence Game, Why We Fall For It Every Time, about a con artist and why people are suckers for a con artist and how it works and why people are taken in. And keep in mind something. So the way you can tell it was a good con, what happens? I come to you with some bullcrap business proposition. I make a friend out of you. I find out that you got certain weaknesses that you want to hear, great things and all that. Tell you you're wonderful, you're smart, you're a good looking couple there, you and your wife, beautiful people. Oh, your children are wonderful. Wow, you sure have done well. Oh, I just pump it up. I tell you everything you want to hear. Then I take you to the cleaners. The cops arrest me and the cops come to you and they say, Mr. and Mrs. Schmo, we regret to tell you that $100,000 that you invested in Garland's company is gone. Garland's a con artist, and he conned you out of that money. I'm sorry. I know that was a significant portion of your life savings, but you ain't never going to see it again because Garland's a con artist. Here's how a good con works. You know what Mr. and Mrs. Schmo say? Garland's a good guy. It was a bad business transaction, but it's going to turn around. Garland promised us that. We know him. They can't believe they've been conned. He suckered them so bad that when the cops tell them they've been had, they still don't believe it. That's a good con. In fact, they call Garland, this is Mr. and Mrs. Schmo. Yeah, I'm in jail. Look, the cops said something terrible. They accused you of being a con man. Garland, we know that's not true. And I'm like, yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Schmo. Thanks for your support. Isn't it terrible that they accused me of conning you? Okay, Garland. Well, they said you're going to have a trial. We're going to come to your trial and we're going to testify on your behalf and say, you're not a con man. You never conned us. You're a good guy. And I'm like, yeah, that's the ticket. And while you're at it, I got another business venture. Once I get out of jail and get off of this particular charge, I got a couple other charges for conning other people. But that's not important now. I got another business venture that we can get involved. And they're like, yeah. Why? Because it's the nature of a sucker to be taken. It's the nature of a sheep to be fleeced. So, as P.T. Barnum said, it's a crime against God and nature to allow a sucker to keep his money. So a good con shows that after the people have been conned, they're still conned. They didn't become unconned. So what do you see in Russiagate? Steele dossier, toast, fell apart. DNC server hacked with emails, Assange, gone, done, finished, absurd, right? Trump collusion, over, laughable, right? Every piece of Russiagate has fallen through inarguable evidence. And you know what I see on Facebook from these poor schmucks to this day? Well, Trump's working for his boss, Vladimir Putin. Well, Trump still works for Putin. Well, the Russians did interfere. Well, I certainly believe that. Well, the Russians did that. It's so bad. Even the conservative same way. They're playing the game. Here's what they'll say. Well, it's true that the Russiagate, that the Steele dossier was a pack of lies, and that the investigators went and talked to the sources for Christopher Steele for the Steele dossier. And keep in mind, what did the sources tell the FBI? This is important. The sources said to the FBI, I made this up. It's bullshit. I made it up with drinking buddies. And the rest of the stuff in there, yeah, Christopher Steele made it up. It's all a pack of lies. So the FBI goes to the Christopher Steele sources, which he said was in Moscow, and the guy was in D.C. working for the Brookings Institute. And the guy says, it's a pack of lies. I lied, he lied, everybody lied. Sorry, you got us. And you know what the Republicans say? We think Steele was a victim of Russian disinformation. Why, we think that the Russians actually gave Steele and his subsources this information to sow confusion, when the guy himself said, I made it up. So how do you put that together, Republicans? How do you come up with a source who says, I made it up, and you change I made it up to the Russians fed him disinformation? So even the Republicans are in on this crap. Everybody's in on it because there's a lot of money in Russiagate, a lot of books written, a lot of ships to be built, defense contracts to go out. A lot of people are getting rich off of this. Meanwhile, so there's people getting bank off of this. Meanwhile, the Democrats, the poor suckers, are just dupes, and they've heard it. And I don't necessarily want to blame them because they hate Trump and they're suckers. And the Republicans are the same way, biggest suckers. Now they've started this China stuff. You know what kills me with the Republicans? I got to add this in. Republicans watch, and I don't understand this about people. This is me. I don't know if it's my law enforcement background, my background as an investigator. I don't know if it's just the nature of me, but it's like this. If I see someone con you with a sucker's game, and they knock on my door, or somebody else knocks on my door with the same sucker's game, I'm not biting the hook. I'm going to be like, sorry, they got that guy up the street. You had to try somebody else. The Democrats got suckered for 4 straight years with Russia did this, Russia's everything, Russia's horrible, Russia's evil, all lies. Now, I guess in their ultimate wisdom, the Republican Party says, hey, China, they're the Communist Party. Conservatives ain't gonna like communists. They start the same thing. China's evil. China's horrible. And the same conservatives who for 4 years watched the Democrats get suckered on Russia bite the same hook, drink the same Kool-Aid. That's why I hate both parties. And I just feel pathetically sorry for the constituents of both parties when I watch the suckers and the Democrats for 4 years. And now I say to the Republicans, you're being had. No, it really is China. How about, hey, Democrats, you're being had. No, it really is China. Oh God, these people. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? The suckers. So I guess that's why they call them suckers, right? If they weren't easily had, they wouldn't be suckers. They'd be something else. So we go on, and We are in a place now where, despite all of the evidence, the Democrats believe that, and now the Republicans believe China and this. And as we get closer to the election, here's what we know. This is where America is. We've got an election coming up, and nobody's going to lose the election. Under any circumstances, nobody's going to lose the election. If Trump loses, China won it for Biden. If Biden loses, Russia won it for Trump, or somebody did something. We're in a sad and decrepit state as far as calling us a democracy. Anytime you've got two countries, and we've got, two ostensibly two parties. I don't really call them two parties. I call them the Warren Wall Street party. But because that's what you get with them, that's their priorities, war and Wall Street. But nobody loses an election anymore. Hey, we lost. No, we didn't. It was stolen by the Russians. No, we did. It was stolen by the Chinese. I guess they're going to get in a fight over who it was stolen by. They'll get in a fist fight. The Russians stole it. No, it was the Chinese. No, it was the Russians. It's like not possible that these are the suckiest parties in the world. And like each of them will win. Like whoever has the most children will win between like Biden and Kamala Harris and Trump and Pence, because only their immediate families will vote for them. They're so bad. That's going to be it. Like, hey, who won? Hey, Trump won 5-2. He's got more grandchildren. Because nobody else is going to vote for these people, in my opinion, in their right minds. But the same people, I'll put it like this: the people who are sucky enough, who are schmucky enough to believe that China's the evil guy or Russia's the evil guy, they're still there. That believes, this is the thing about China. This is what kills me. In the 1990s and 2000s, the people who own all of these companies that made all this stuff, and they owned the textile mills in North Carolina and South Carolina where they made furniture and carpet and all kinds of textiles, right? They owned the factories where they made ball bearings and steel and all these things in all over throughout the Rust Belt. All of these owners of these companies said, hey, we could move our factories to China and make a lot more profit. So they moved all of their factories to China. Same thing in England, France, all over the place. Hey, let's move our factories. So all of the Western world moved their factories to China. Hey, China, can we move our factories there where we can pay people less? Sure, why not? What you would expect them to say no? They move them there. They pay the people less. They take a big profit. Jobs go down. There's despair in the Midwest. There's, the highest rate of suicide now is white males, like age 40 to 60 or 35 to 60. Jobs are gone. People are miserable. They're on drugs. It's just horrible now. Horrible. But they moved their factories over there. American magnates, American rich corporate owners moved their factories, British, French, all of them moved their factories to China to make more profit. And now they say, China, we've been had by China. They took us. Look what they did. They treated us bad. And people are like, yeah, there we got. China didn't move my job there. You had a factory here, but you didn't want to pay Americans a decent wage because you didn't give a crap about Americans. You wanted to make more money and put it in your pocket, and now you're going to blame China. And now there's a certain level of Republicans that are going to say, yeah, we've got real problems with China. Here's the thing about it. As long as that happens, as long as it's Russia's fault, the Democrats will never look at the leadership of their party and say, you're the ones that signed off on this stuff. You're the ones that have lied to us, that have led us astray, that have misled us, that have give everything to Wall Street, give everything to big tech, give everything to the military industrial complex. They ain't going to say that. They're going to say that Vladimir Putin screwed our lives up. And the Republicans are never going to look at their leaders and say, guys, we've been had, took. Guys, look what you did. You're the ones that worked out these free trade deals with the Democrats. You guys did that together. And it sent all of our jobs away. No, the Republicans are not going to blame the people who did it. You're not going to blame the elite ruling class. This is a way for the elite ruling class to deflect blame from what they're doing. And like any good con game, like Russiagate, Chinagate, you name it, it's gonna work. Because Americans don't want to believe that they've been had by their own ruling class. They do not want to believe that it's Americans that took them to the cleaner. It's a Russian guy, it's a Chinese guy, it's somebody in another country. Maybe it's an undocumented immigrant. Think about this. Why did all of these Mexican people come across the border? Why? What happened? How'd that happen? They had farms, they were doing their thing in Mexico, but suddenly they all start coming across the border. NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, that Bill Clinton passed in the 1990s with mostly Republican support. So Bill Clinton, guilty as hell. Republicans, guilty as hell. And what happened? You had literally millions of Mexicans that were small farmers. They had a little small farm, and had good weather there in Mexico, and they were making a living, selling a little bit of stuff and doing whatever. They were, you might call them peasant or poor farmers. They were surviving. They were fine. They didn't mess with nobody, right? NAFTA passes. These big factory farmers come in. The prices of corn and the things that they were selling drops. They can't make a living. They lose their farms. They come across the border. So now the Republicans that are mad at all of these Mexicans for coming over here getting a job, it was Bill Clinton and the Republican Party that passed NAFTA, and that's why they're here. And once again, are you going to get mad at the people that did it to you? No. You're going to get mad at the people who are suffering from the results of these actions of the elite ruling class in the same way that you're suffering from the results of that. And no matter what, it's Russia, it's China, it's undocumented immigrants who are coming across because of the decisions of the elite ruling class, and they will never say, I did it to you. And you ain't going to say you did it to me. You're going to say, well, if only these people weren't here, we'd make more money picking grapes or something. I don't know. And they're going to say, yeah, all we got to do is get rid of them and your worries are over. They passed the bills. They passed. Do you hear them saying we got to get rid of NAFTA? We got to get rid of these free trade agreements, and we got to set it up so those people can make a living in their small peasant farms and get their farms back like they used to have, and they won't come over here. They didn't want to come here. They didn't want to lose their little farms. And that's the way it works. That's the way it works. And what happens? General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, they close their Detroit and Ohio and Indiana factories. They move them right across the border into Mexico, where they can pay people $3 an hour instead of $30 an hour. No benefits, no nothing. The elite ruling class did it. And Russiagate or Chinagate or whatever gate it is always a way to deflect us from the truth, to take us to the cleaners. And what I've learned from Russiagate to end it all up is that, sadly, I don't know if it's the fault of Americans, or I don't know if our elite ruling class and our intelligence community is just really that good at falsifying information, at putting out misinformation, at misleading people and lying people and taking us to the cleaners. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is, but all I can say is look in the mirror right now. People are like, we're the greatest country in the world. Everybody wants to come here. Who wants to come here now? This place is a smoking pile of rubble. We have Donald Trump, who is unthinkably incompetent, and he's running against Joe Biden. Joe Biden doesn't even rise to the level of incompetence. The man has some kind of unbelievable, it's unbelievable. The Democratic Party is running a man who has some kind of a degenerative cognitive brain disease, a trauma, illness, something or other. I'm watching the other day, he's introducing Kamala Harris, right? And he's saying, this is your next vice president. But he couldn't say, if you listen to him a lot, he has speech trouble, right? He couldn't say president. His words kind of run together and start getting slurred. And he said, this is your next vice president. That's it. He was saying vice president, and it came out like vice president. Look, in the long run, I don't like Biden's policies. He's a warmonger. But the man's almost 80 years old. Apparently, I understand, maybe some people, I understand he's had some brain surgeries or something, like some brain trauma. I don't know if he has dementia, brain trauma, whatever it is. I don't know. Clinically, I am not capable of making those, that kind of a diagnosis. Certainly, that's not what I did. But I know when something's wrong when I see it. And he's like, yeah, you're next vice president. His words just kind of slur, and you'll notice that a lot. So now we've got one party who's got Donald Trump, who is stellarly incompetent. And we've got Joe Biden, who they put out a guy, they've got a guy who they got to hide in the basement, who has some kind of a cognitive, either brain trauma or something, who can't talk, can't remember things real well, who can't do a debate. They gotta say no debate. Biden can't do a debate. If Biden does a debate, this thing's over. He's exposed, and they can't have that. So they got to get out of the debate. And that's what America has sunk into. Donald Trump and Mike Pence, two warmongering neocon Wall Streeters. Donald Trump came in, I'm something different. I'm a nationalist. I'm blah, 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 and signed off on the greatest transfer of wealth. For all that he talked about Biden, for all the Republicans talked about the bailouts, they did a bailout that made 2008 look like nothing. So that's who Donald Trump is, a fraud, a billionaire fraud. And Biden, well, at least one good thing about Biden, we already know the bailouts, all that. So he's neoliberal. That he don't even try to pretend that ain't him. And that's what we got. And Kamala Harris, don't even start me on Kamala Harris. So that's where we are. And oh my gosh, it's been an hour. So I got to call it quits. I got a book. I see so many people there who have things to say. Garden Gnome, Chicken Patty, Looney Lobster, Nashira 46. Yeah, she put elder abuse. In a way it is. In a way it is. I mean, he's a very, very wealthy elder, and he's gotten his money in some very crooked, shisty ways. I mean, the man is corrupt as hell. He is so corrupt. It's unbelievable. It's almost laughable how corrupt he is. But at any rate, that's who he is. And that's where we are. I want to thank everybody. If you like this video, like, share, subscribe, all that kind of, don't forget that. Share it on all your, oh my gosh, I'm talking about, I have some cognitive degeneration on all your social media platforms. So thank you. Appreciate it. And oh, wait a minute. If you want to get in touch with me, at Garland Nixon on Twitter, Garland.Nixon on Instagram, just plain old Garland Nixon on Facebook. And of course, if you want to email me, my first name and the first letter of my last name, garlandn@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something. I'm out.